Right, did everyone go?
I unsubscribed.
Ask the Hosts, episode 5. I'm Joe, and it's just me for this intro, but don't worry, other hosts will show up. In case you haven't listened before, the idea of this is very simple. Random hosts from the Late Night Linux family get together and answer questions that people have sent to show@askthehost.com. They can be about anything you like, as long as it's not Linux and open source. Thank you to everyone who supports us. If you support us on Patreon at any level at all, then you'll get episodes of this show 2 weeks before everyone else who doesn't support us. This is really a show for patrons, to be honest, but we don't like paywalls. We like to keep everything accessible, so we're experimenting with a 2-week time wall, if that's a thing. So this episode's a little bit different. It's going to be a mixture of questions that got cut out of older episodes for time reasons, and also some questions that people have asked that really are directed at me, and so I thought I'd just answer those solo. But first, here's a question from the episode that had Mark, Martin, Gary, and Amolith. Rowdy asks, do you think we are living in a simulation, and why do you think that?
No.
Well, I had a feeling you were going to say no to that.
My rationale is simply this. I haven't experienced any disruptions as a result of software updates.
If it was a simulation, it would be buggier than this.
Yeah, this is the most remarkable piece of software ever.
I don't know, it seems pretty buggy to me sometimes.
See, for me, I also think no. But then I get something like deja vu creep up. And then I think, this is a little bit weird. Like, I had it just on the train down to London this week, where I was sitting there and scrolling through the photo library on my phone, deleting photos. It's like, I'm sure I've been here before, and I'm sure I've done this before. And quite feasibly, it is something I could have done before. But I just had this overwhelming feeling that I'd been in this exact situation, in this exact seat on this train before, deleting the same photos from my phone. And stuff like that sometimes makes me question it. But ultimately, no, it's far too stable.
I remember seeing a documentary about deja vu, and I don't remember all of the details, but I think it was something along the lines of you experience deja vu when you're tired, and there's sort of some latency in the way that your synapses fire. And what's happening in front of you right now actually gets committed to memory before you're processing the actualization of it. And so this is what lends itself to it feeling like something you've done before. So you probably just need a good kip.
That sounds like a pretty bad bug to me. I think that's proof that we are in a simulation.
I mean, it sounds entirely feasible to me. You had me at tired, given that we have a 10-month-old in the house.
Oh, well, there you go then.
Amolith, you're young. You must believe in this nonsense.
I also say no, but I love listening to people who say yes. They always have interesting reasoning.
Yeah, but I think for me, the answer is no as well, but it's just because there's not really any proof of it. There's no evidence either way, is there? It's a bit like God. Like there's just this, you can't really prove it either way. You just believe what you want. It's just a matter of faith, essentially.
The only way you can know if you're in a simulation is the moment at which you've been removed from it.
Yeah, I suppose we'll all find out one day then.
But not today.
Hopefully. All right, and here's a question from the episode that had Popey, Félim, and Will. Porek asks, what's your favourite foreign language swear word? When did you hear it? Mine is kurva.
No, that was mine. Damn it.
No, that's mine, which if you are in London, anyone from Eastern Europe says it about 5 times per sentence when they're talking their native language to their friends.
Go on then, I'll bite. What does it mean?
Well, none of them will give me a straight answer. I think it literally means like bitch, maybe.
That's certainly one term, all right, yeah. Look at Wiktionary.com. It's got it.
Well, it just means like anything you want it to mean. It's a bit like fuck for us, I suppose.
Right.
I don't know, but you just walk around London and you will just hear people saying kurva.
There was a guy in the programming job where I had to be on site for, and he said it relentlessly. I thought he was Polish. I looked it up. It's not actually a Polish word, but I guess it's a Russian influence word. And he got to the point where he'd say it and we'd all burst out laughing, the whole office, because we were all waiting for it all day. Like the kurva counter you can tick.
Yeah, and it's not spelled anything like you would imagine. It's spelled with a Kurwa or something.
Yeah, but there's about 17 A's at the end of it and possibly 3 U's if you're to enunciate it correctly.
So I'm very British and I don't know any foreign languages, and thus I don't know any swear words in foreign languages. But when I first went on a lad's holiday to Ibiza in 1990 something, early 90s, me and my mate Dave stayed in a little hotel, and as we left the hotel, the guy behind the counter asked us if we spoke any Spanish, and we said no. And he goes, okay, I'll teach you some stuff. And he taught us loads of stuff. And the only thing that I have retained from that entire journey was ¿Dónde están los ceniceros? Which is, where are the ashtrays? And I didn't smoke, and I don't smoke, and I never have smoked.
It's not a very useful thing.
No, we spent the entire evening chatting up the Spanish ladies by just saying, ¿Dónde están los ceniceros? And they'd be like, what? Like, probably because we didn't pronounce it very well, but it worked for us.
So you don't know any swear words in foreign languages? That's the first stuff you learn.
No, it's not. It's 2 beers, thank you, and can I have the bill?
Yeah. And where is the swimming pool?
And I'm sorry I've soiled my underwear. Where can I buy some more?
Please fetch the hall porter. There appears to be a frog in my bidet. No, much like Popey, I don't really know any foreign language swears. I know merde in French, which I use interchangeably with English quite often. I don't know why. I just do.
German ones are boring. I know them because I can actually speak, well, okay, inverted commas, speak German. And that's boring because when you know a swear word, I think it loses all power. It's like saying in, Italian, oh, I've got a Maserati Quattroporto, which literally means 4 doors. I mean, it's the coolest sounding name that means the shittest thing. But a good one I liked for a while was Vada Board Cazzo, which is the Italian Coast Guard said to that fucking bell end captain who crashed his fucking cruise liner when he was doing the gap between this tiny arse of a rock and the mainland of Italy. And it's like this threading the needle sort of thing. And I think he was probably pissed or essentially sank the entire massive vessel off the coast of Italy.
There's an Australian swear word that starts with C, but I can't remember exactly what it is.
Should bring that up the next business meeting, I think.
Yeah, good idea. All right, solo questions then. Achilles asks, have you ever turned down an advertiser because you didn't like what they were selling? Yes, is the simple answer to that. There's one that jumps to mind. I can't even remember the name of them, which is good because I wouldn't want to name them either way. But I had the conversation with someone at this company and they were really enthusiastic, looking to spend loads of money on ads across all the different shows. And they wanted to do a big, long campaign advertising this thing. And it all seemed really good. But then we did a bit of research on this company. And it turned out that there'd been some trouble with the FCC or some federal agency in America. And it was just a big red flag and just thought, this is a good deal, but it's not worth it. This company could be dodgy. And I spoke to the person at the company again and they said, oh no, that FCC stuff was just bullshit and, blah, 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 whatever. And this person was quite a good... quite good at sales, let's just say, quite the smarmy salesperson. And I just thought, nah. And, we spoke about it internally and we just thought, no, this is a bad idea. So didn't go for that. And we do turn down stuff from the agency that we deal with because the agency proposes potential advertisers and then I take it to the members of the Late Night Linux family and say, what do we think of this company selling X, Y, and Z? And we discuss it. And usually it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. They seem like a reasonable company. But sometimes it's like, no, that's just not interested in that. And it's often, I won't even put stuff to the rest of the hosts when it's stuff like medical stuff and supplements. It just seems all a little bit Joe Rogan, really, that kind of stuff. A little bit dodgy to me. So in answer to your question, Achilles, yes, definitely. We try to be very selective as possible, really. Okay, Joe asks, not me, what are some of the pre-show logistics like? Of course, there are shared docs, but how do you schedule to coordinate time zones? So yeah, shared docs generally, although increasingly with some of the shows where it's just more of a broad discussion, we'll just have a pinned message in Telegram because each show has its own little Telegram group of just the hosts in that show. And that's where we discuss pretty much everything from the topics we're going to discuss on the show to when we're actually going to get together and record and how. And we've had some problems with Jitsi, and we've tried different ways to connect and stuff. And yeah, time zones, man. Time zones. Just, I wish everything was just UTC all the time. It can be a real nightmare. The secret is to just pick a schedule and stick to it rigidly. So whether that is Monday night at 8 o'clock or whether it's Wednesday night at 11 o'clock, my time, if you just make sure that every 2 weeks, that's the time when you record, it makes it so much easier rather than trying to scramble around every time to find a day and time that suits everyone. And guests are really difficult because you've got to coordinate the hosts on the show and the guest. And then it's sometimes, well, this host isn't available. So, well, do we just do it without them? It's honestly one of the hardest parts of doing a job like this. And it's taken me a while to get good at it, I think. And even now, there's a lot of room for improvement. I think everyone should use that calendar thing where you've just got like available times and it just automatically converts it to your time zone. I think if everyone used something like that, maybe an open source version of it or something, maybe that would be good. All right, Joe also asks, approximately what percentage of the recording gets edited out? Do you have much? Wait, that didn't work. Erase that and let me try again. And MKFG asks how much flamey opinions is actually cut out of 2.5 admins. This is a really difficult question to answer because it really depends on the recording. As for flamey opinions, not really anything specific. With 2.5 admins, generally speaking, if you get Jim and Alan talking about something that they really care about, like, for example, ZFS, they will just talk about that until you tell them to shut up. And so sometimes I'll try and jump in and they're just not having it. They just keep going and going and going. And I just make a mental note, right, I'm going to cut from here on until they stop talking. And so sometimes it'll be like 5-10 minutes at the end of a segment that just gets put straight in the bin. But other times the discussion will just be a perfect length. So there's not a hard and fast answer to that, really. It also depends on the length of the show generally, because I try and keep the run times of the episodes to be pretty short, because I am a podcast listener first and foremost. And I try and make episodes that I would want to listen to. And I just have no interest in listening to hour-plus episodes where people just ramble on and on and on. Sort of half an hour is about the sweet spot, but sometimes 20 minutes is fine. Sometimes 15 minutes is fine. If that's just what the topic of the episode is about, then, nice, short and sweet. Because I refresh my podcast player, AntennaPod, every day. And I look at all the stuff that's available. And then I download stuff that looks interesting. And then it's in my queue. And then, okay, I need to, whatever, go and water my wife's plants now or whatever. What am I going to listen to? And I look down the list and I have to decide based on how interesting it looks and also how long it is. If it's an hour and a half, I'm just not going to pick that episode. And so that's a very long way of saying that quite a lot of editing and moving around of topics happens. We'll often just record a load of topics and then I sort of cut them up into rough chunks and then just put them together into episodes like a jigsaw, because I also try and make episodes that are coherent and make sense as a whole episode. Like if we've talked a lot about one topic in one part of it, then maybe we might want to have a complementary topic or something that's totally different in the other part of the episode. Maybe I'm making it more complicated than it needs to be. I don't know. But in answer to the question, what percentage gets cut out? Probably 50-ish% of the whole recording gets cut out, because often we'll just end up just going on a ramble about all sorts of random stuff. And it's like, right, okay, let's get back to this episode. All right, Devilman asks, given the variety of podcasts you appear on, do you feel your role changes on each one from being an everyman, audience surrogate, to a chairman who guides the discussion, to being an active participant? I think to some extent, yes. I think on Late Night Linux, I really drive the conversation, and that's where I get a lot of my opinions out. And if you look at the waveforms of all the different recordings, there's a lot of me and not as much of the others. Although when we do discoveries, that tends to be like a lot of one person at a time, like introducing the thing, talking about what they're talking about. But on the news episodes where we're all chipping in, there's definitely more of me in those, I've noticed. Whereas on 2.5 admins, I tend to just introduce the topics and then ask a few questions here and there and, read out the emails and stuff. And it's mostly Jim and Alan on that one. And then other shows, it kind of depends. If there's a guest, then it's often just mostly hearing from them. But the idea of a chairman who guides the discussion, I think, that's sort of overall how I see myself. Because the thing is that every single host on the Late Night Linux shows is an expert who works in the field of IT, in Linux and open source to some extent. Except for me, I just make podcasts about it. And so my job is generally to ask the right questions of the experts. So I think that's mostly how I see myself, but it's hard on Late Night Linux, especially if I've been drinking, to not just go off on rants about various companies and whatnot. Right, here's another question from the episode with Mark, Martin, Gary and Amolith. Simon asks, is there a conspiracy theory that you think could actually be true?
No conspiracy theories are at the top of my mind. I couldn't name one if you asked me to.
I have a conspiracy theory that I couldn't actually believe is true, but I believe is true.
Right.
Oswald did not kill JFK.
Right. Who did then?
Well, that's the conspiracy. I don't know who did or how many people were involved, but I know for sure certain that the official outcome, naming Oswald as the lone killer stroke shooter, is clearly bunkum.
Right, not because of that dreadful Oliver Stone movie, I hope.
Oh, gosh, no. No. I think there's incontrovertible good scientific data to prove the fact that, he could not have done that alone from where he was.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say, no, don't believe in any of that nonsense.
I had to think long and hard about that question, and I had the same opinion as Amolith, where I was just thinking, I don't move in circles where I hear about conspiracy theories. So, I obviously know there are nutters that think the earth is flat, or that maybe they're just contrarians and they're just wanting to be different in some way. So, I know of all the obvious stuff and it's all nonsense. But I was trying to think, well, I don't really know of any actual conspiracy theories. But then I thought, oh yeah, JFK. The conspiracy is that Oswald didn't kill JFK, and I can subscribe to that.
See, I do encounter quite a few conspiracy theories because I listen to a podcast called Skeptoid, which is about critical thinking and examining cultural phenomenon through a sort of skeptical and critical lens. So a lot of the episodes of that are about conspiracy theories and UFOs and hauntings and things like that, and cryptids and all sorts of wacky topics. But I think what I've learned from that more than anything is when you actually look at the truth behind these stories, the truth is often far more interesting and far more entertaining than the made up nonsense that comes out of it. The most disappointing ones are where it's like, there was this event that was reported by lots of people and it's in lots of papers, and then you do the research and actually there was a quote in a newspaper from someone who never existed, or the story that everyone shared was actually originally just fiction and then someone misreported it as fact and then it grew as a mythology. But there are some where actually you look into an account of a UFO and you look at what it actually was, and it was a particular formation of aircraft flying in particular conditions, which looked a particular way in the sky, and you can actually look at the records and find out where they were and what they were doing. And that's far more interesting to me than, could it be aliens who was abducted? Things like that.
Yeah, that feels like such a lazy answer when you hear people posturing that it's aliens. It's like, if it was aliens, we'd blooming know for sure certain. And apart from anything, we'd probably have been obliterated because the technology they'd need to cover the vastness of space to get here would mean we would be inconsequential to whatever their plans might have been.
Yeah, we wouldn't know anything about it, would we? We'd just all be gone suddenly and they'd be extracting our resources
right
behind our backs.
But it kind of comes like a similar idea for me to the simulation questions. Yeah, you might have something weird and you think, that means we're in a simulation. But of all of the possible explanations for any of these phenomena, why would you jump to it's a simulation, it can't be anything else, or it's aliens, it can't be anything else? There's so many more interesting and plausible things that it could be.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think for me, there's so many of these things that can be explained away with fact, and it's never beyond the realm of possibility that something logical did happen. So, yeah, I find it really difficult to subscribe to those things, particularly when they're really out there, like alien landings or whatever. It's just, there is no evidence or logic to suggest that something like that would happen.
Well, for me, the one that I could believe in, and you'll have to stick with me here, is that there's a shadowy elite of billionaires running the world. Now, I don't have this childlike belief that they are massively organized and orchestrating every aspect of our lives, but it just seems logical to me that the world is run like a business, and you've got some bosses at the top who will get together and try and push their own individual competing interests on the world. And we know that they do have meetings where they get together, like Bilderberg and stuff. And that just seems logical that they would do that. And so I don't think that it's as straightforward as there is a shadowy cabal running the world. But I think that clearly there are some very rich people who are very influential and in their own ways are attempting to run the world.
Mm-hmm. I could get behind that one.
Is that a conspiracy theory? I don't know. Like it's sort of an explanation of a very simplified conspiracy theory, maybe.
I considered that as a conspiracy theory until it struck me it's the realization of the world that we live in, that anyone that has any political capital is also financially influential and supported by financially significant organizations and individuals. So it seems entirely reasonable that that is the world order.
And I mean, if you look at it in terms of if you have a lot of money, you undoubtedly use a lot of that for some sort of tax efficient foundation and charity, which means that you get to do good things with your money. But the other way of looking at that is that means that the people with the money get to decide what good things should be done, as opposed to that money going to it's kind of difficult for me to say living in the UK at the moment, giving it to the government who would then do good things with it on behalf of everyone. Although I realise that isn't always the case, depending on your government. But the point is that it's individual decisions about how this money gets used for good, and those things are likely to be to further the interests of the people spending the money.
Yeah, also the world is definitely flat.